السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على نبي المصطفى وبعد. Welcome back to the second segment of 9/11 of Humanity program, mashallah. This is extensive program, and I hope that the viewers at home, they are glued to it and you are giving good hearing and good watching to it. In this program, we're discussing, as the concept and the title says, 9/11 of Humanity. 9/11 obviously is emergency number, 911 for America, equivalent to our 999. And when the initial 9/11 happened, basically 11th of September, according to American calendar, that was 9/11. Where Twin Towers and building number 7 and this and that and jets coming into even American institutions and so on, Pentagon, without any trace of any aircraft contents or material or any bodies and so on. So since then, the you can say the gloves came off, and there was active agenda to attack Muslim countries and Muslim personalities around the world. There are many people and many organizations that got directly or indirectly affected by this, and there are personalities whose families' lives were torn apart from this, you can say, step and so on. It was called that either you are with us or without. Right now, you can say 24 years later, we are asking same question, either you are with humanity or without humanity. It's coming to 25 years. Next year it will be 25 years since 9/11. What have we learned in these 25 years? What have we changed in our policies and in our approach and so on? And how much basically we fall for propaganda and for false information, and how much narrative of enemies we carry forward. So this program is preparation for that, and until next year we want to basically discuss this in depth. And while it's 25th anniversary, we want to make sure that British audience who deserve to know the reality and the truth and the situation behind the scene, it is in public interest to know these things, are well educated by next year, inshallah. In this segment, I have very amazing personality who've been through a lot, who have sacrificed a lot, but stood for justice and for Islamic values and human rights. Mashallah, he's with us, and in next 35 minutes, 40 minutes, we'll be discussing some key aspects of it. Brother Moazzam Begg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are
Pleasure
you?
to be here. Alhamdulillah.
It's my first time, I think, one-to-one session with you. It took 20 years, but nevertheless, we are here. Pleasure to have you on Iqra TV, and pleasure to have you on this 9/11 of Humanity program. I mean, it's whole ocean, isn't it? It's a lot to discuss.
It is indeed.
From 2001 up to now, and anything that has happened since then up to now, we want to touch a bit on it. We've been discussing Fortilla situation. There has been most recent one is the Gaza situation, which has basically effects on Syria, on Lebanon, partially in Jordan and so on. And Qatar, Iran, and Iraq became victim of it, launching and waging war against 7 countries at the same time. So many people know a lot of information about it. Many people know about the atrocities and this and that. But are there any key factors that needs to be discussed and need to be brought to the light of public? That's what this program is about.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. I think one of the things people perhaps, we're talking about 9/11. It's the 11th of, or rather the 9th of November. But as you said correctly, the 24-year anniversary happened on September the 11th. And whilst two anniversaries of this attack passed, the invasion, occupation, and destruction of Gaza was taking place. I want people to think about something that happened very early on, and that was there was a series of young girls from America. Their videos went viral, and they went viral because they said, oh, now we understand why the war on terror happened and why there's this enmity regarding Palestine and Israel. And you know what that video was about? It was a letter written by Osama bin Laden in 2002. It's called An Open Letter to the People of America. And that letter was published and was on the website of the Guardian newspaper for over 20 years. And that letter mentioned in it the reasons behind 9/11, which most people never talk about. And it mentioned in it Palestine and Israel 20 times. So if you want to understand why 9/11 actually happened, whether you agree with it, whether you disagree with it, whether you don't agree that it was done by them, whatever, this is the person accused of being the mastermind of 9/11 saying this is why it happened, because of Palestine, more than any other place mentioned in that letter. When these girls were reading this letter and making these videos on TikTok, it became totally viral. Girl after girl, teenage girls got no connection to the war on terror, no connection to the Muslim world, is saying, oh my goodness, now I've understood. The effect of that video was so powerful that The Guardian, which is a pretty liberal newspaper, removed the letter that had been on the website for 20 plus years. And this, I think, Imam Qasim, is when we look at things at the height of when something's happened, people are afraid to talk about things because there's a period of fear. So people are being imprisoned, people are being tortured, they're having perhaps their livelihood chased after, bank accounts being closed down, new laws are being passed. In the UK, a new law almost every single year has been passed under anti-terror laws, which doesn't say in the legislation this is for Muslims, but in practical application, it applies mostly to Muslims. Things like Schedule 7 being stopped and questioned and being forced to give your password at an airport, even though you're not suspected of committing a crime. And so these type of things are now normal. It's kind of a normal thing. It happens to me all the time. On the occasions when I can travel, passport removals, nationality revocations, we've had all of that happen to Muslims. So the fear creates this atmosphere where people don't want to talk. They don't want to say, well, this is why X, Y, Z has happened. You don't have to agree with something to explain why it's happened. You may even oppose it. There's many non-Muslims, many CIA agents and analysts who've said, this is why it happened, but I'm hunting them down. I'm hunting down the perpetrators. But to suggest that you can't say why it happened is to endorse it. And that, I think, as they say, all roads lead to Jerusalem. In the case of 9/11, that's completely true. That's completely true.
I mean, exactly, because it goes back to Benjamin Netanyahu's speech about nearly 27, 28 years ago, few years before 9/11, where he was asked about his wish list, which countries he would like to bring down. Literally, he was asked to give his wish list, that which countries he wished that needs to be targeted. And he mentioned very same countries in that: Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, this and that. He has slightly bigger wish list now, but within few years, all this was orchestrated and was following, you can say, fulfilling his desire. Anyway, you carry on.
One of the things, Imam Qasim, that has been amazing for me is that in the past 2 years, I have gone to two places that I was imprisoned either in or because of. I was imprisoned in the Bagram prison by the Americans for 1 year before I was sent to Guantanamo in 2002. And I was imprisoned here in the UK in 2014 for connection to the Syrian rebels. And I remained in Belmarsh for 7 months as a Category A prisoner. And I was released, my charges were dropped, and I won my case before it went to court. Both those places, in the space of within 2 years, have been liberated. And now when I go to those places, especially in Afghanistan, I am with people who were imprisoned with me. Only these people now are the leaders of the country, the heads of different departments in the government. And you couldn't have imagined this. In 1,000 years, you couldn't have imagined that I couldn't have imagined that you could go back to a place like that, where I saw American soldiers murder Afghan prisoners, one of them with his hands tied above his head, being punched and kicked, beaten to death. And I walked into Bagram prison with an Al Jazeera camera team, and they were filming every little aspect of returning to this, what I call the scene of a crime. And alhamdulillah, this time now, there was only ghosts and cobwebs of what remained of the Americans and their presence in Bagram. And as you've heard, Donald Trump has said, I want Bagram back. Now, you can only have something back if it belonged to you in the first place. Bagram is part of the region of Bagram, the city of Bagram. And the Americans have built a base.
If anyone has a right on it, then it must be Russians.
Well, not even them, because they may have, yeah.
If anyone.
Yeah, they built it.
They are the one who built it.
But nobody has a right on it.
Yeah.
Nobody has a right on it. This is Israeli language.
Yes.
We were there for a little while, and therefore, because we were there for a little while, we have the right to have it forever. You can't do that. That's not how it works. If that was the case, the Romans and the Italians could claim Britain, and the Islamic world could claim Spain and Portugal. So we can't get Israel, as they call it, and certainly that's not going to happen in Afghanistan. But for me, as you said, I think we spoke earlier on, I went to Sednaya prison also. I went to Farah, Palestine, in Syria, in Damascus. Now, Farah, Palestine, as my organization, Cage, we were doing investigations on that prison long before people in the West knew about it. And that's because people were being detained by the Americans in Pakistan and elsewhere and being sent to Farah, Palestine, that was run by the Assad regime, meaning there was intelligence cooperation between the Assad regime and the United States. Now, who would have imagined that when they're the axis of evil, but when it came to, let's just say, the vision of certain types of Muslims, they were ready to work together. When I went into Farah, Palestine, you'll be shocked what I found, books, registers. We're reading through these registers, and this is from around 2004, 2003, 2004, 2005. It's got names of people from Pakistan, from India, from Iraq, from Sudan, Somalia, all over the world who've been imprisoned. And it says, so I'm reading it, it says Al-Ism, the name, it says then Al-Jama', Intima' Ma'i Jama', which group they're connected to. Wal-Ism Al-Jama'at Al-Irhabiyya, the name of the terrorist group, and do you know what it was? That I found repeatedly? Jama'at Al-Tabligh wa Da'wah. Tablighi Jamaat, in other words. So they regarded the Tablighi Jamaat, which is a totally apolitical, non-violent Muslim organization, they regarded that as a terrorist organization, and they were imprisoning people and torturing them in Farah, Palestine, as well in Sednaya. So that was all part of, when we think of the war on terror, it's not just America. America outsourced its terror program, its torture program, to places that even America wouldn't do those things, that what they did in Syria and they did in Libya. I went to prisons in Libya and saw torture chambers there where people have been murdered by the Gaddafi's regime. And they had been sent, individuals had been sent with British complicity, American complicity. There's only been one case in the whole of the war on terror in which a British Prime Minister has ever apologized, and that's the case of a Libyan. His name is Abdul Hakim Bil Hajj, and that's because they found the documents that the British intelligence under Mark Allen had sent alongside Abdul Hakim Bil Hajj, which said to Gaddafi, this is a present for you. And so when they discovered these documents, when the rebels liberated the intelligence building, they found these documents. And through litigation, Prime Minister Theresa May was forced to apologize to this man because the evidence was in the hands of the clients, not in the hands of the British.
You touched on Bagram prison and airbase, and you've been there obviously, and you've been in Guantanamo. But what I heard is that Bagram was far more severe than Guantanamo.
Indeed.
It's true.
Yes, it was, and there's a reason why that, because Bagram prison, it was amongst the first prisons. It was Kandahar prison and Bagram prison. They set that up before they set up Guantanamo. And the processing, it was really a dehumanizing process before somebody goes into US custody, being stripped naked, beaten, tortured, spat upon, dogs salivating over you, being forced, your beards shaved off. I mean, that was one of the things you found the American soldiers laughing at, because they're all prisoners are Muslims from all over the world. And you'd see old men stripped naked, Afghan men, Pakistani men, many men from Arab world.
And mostly in front of others.
In front of everybody, yeah. And shaved off, the beard shaved off. And then photographs being taken. Now remember, this is 1 year before Abu Ghraib scandals. And what's important that people don't understand.
Abu Ghraib of Iraq.
Yeah, Abu Ghraib, the prison where they had infamously the naked pyramid of prisoners and the torture of prisoners. So the person that was responsible in Guantanamo for running the enhanced interrogation technique program, which is another word for torture, was General Jeffrey Miller. He was in charge of that. In 2003, that's where he was based. I met him. After that, he was redeployed to Abu Ghraib. And he said, and I quote, "I'm going to Gitmoize, mean Guantanamo-ize, the detainee treatment process in Abu Ghraib." And this is so important for us to understand the cycles of violence, because Abu Ghraib is the place, Abu Ghraib and Camp Bukka is the place that eventually, after several years, ISIS was born. The organization called ISIS was born in the prison camps run by the Americans, where they had begun the torture program that they started on us. And you torture anybody enough, you'll turn them. Even if they were the most peaceful of people, you'll turn something in them. You'll switch, that's normal human nature. You'll either break them or you'll twist them. And that's what happened. And so what results then, ISIS comes along and it makes Al-Qaeda look like kindergarten.
Yes.
And that is the end result of torture. 17 members of ISIS, 25 leaders, were held in Camp Bukka and Abu Ghraib. And again, there's no correlation and there's no attempt to hold to account those people from the leadership of the Americans and the British who were involved in setting that up. And that's one of the things we try to do in Cage, is to try to make people remember. They may have forgotten, we haven't forgotten.
Yes. I mean, US aid, you touched on basically ISIS and like that. US aid was shut down recently by President Trump. Not recently, but as soon as he came in, soon after that. And a lot of information came out about US aid, how they were spending money or wasting money and this and that. But it also came out, and very quickly it was covered and controlled, that US aid funded setup of ISIS and Boko Haram. It was funded through US aid.
It's quite possible. I mean, America, if you recall, they provided the blowpipe, the Stinger anti-aircraft missile system to the Afghan Mujahideen against the Soviets in the 1980s. There's a reason why they did that. The British first tried. They brought Afghan Mujahideen to the mountains of Snowdonia, and the SAS soldiers who were training them said that it was easy to teach these mountain warriors, and they taught them the use of the blowpipe anti-aircraft missile system. And being British, it just turned out to be useless. So it was ineffective, and that's when the CIA brought in the blowpipe, the Stinger anti-aircraft missile system, which had a 7 to 10 kill ratio of the helicopters. My point in mentioning this is that America will support Mujahideen whenever it suits them. America will support Sharia law whenever it suits. America will support Islamic banking whenever it suits. Britain will do the same. They supported the Islamic fighting, the Jama'ah al-Islamiyya Musallaha, the Libyan Islamic fighting group in Libya. The RAF was bombing sorties, sending bombing sorties against Gaddafi's positions. And the Libyan Mujahideen, some who had been imprisoned in the UK under anti-terrorism laws, were fighting there. So what that tells you is that you can call somebody a terrorist, you can create laws and so forth, but what tops all of that is your interests. And so when interests suit, they would forget supporting Muslims groups, they'll support groups that are against themselves. Because you had this famous statement by Lord Palmerston, who was I think the Foreign Secretary in 1852. He said, we have no perpetual enemies, he's talking about Britain, we have no eternal friends. Only our interests are perpetual and eternal, and we shall follow them. 2 years after saying that, he became Prime Minister. And it tells you everything you need to know about how policies work.
That's right, yes. So, going through all this filter and all the process, what solution you look at? I mean,
for me, I become more and more aware that solution for mankind is within Islam. How does that look? Because everybody's saying that we have the solution. Everybody's saying that everybody can talk that talk. But you know, in the famous words of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who writes Sherlock Holmes, what he does to solve a problem, he says, when you've eliminated the impossible, then whatever remains, no matter how improbable, is the solution. Right? So what we have to do is take out everything that simply fails humankind, fails society, and then come to realize that very, very few places in the world, if at all, implement Islam as a complete system. And I don't mean by people who talk about the Khilafah and so forth. I just mean that Islam as a way of life, a simple thing. You can call it what you want, but we have solutions for mankind. Take a simple one here in the UK, where the cost of living crisis. If Islam was implemented, and we can't take the Gulf as an example of Islam, right? But if Islam was implemented, Prophet ﷺ said you can't, going to sleep with your neighbor hungry, that's not from Islam. Islam rejects this. And so the concepts and the precepts of morality and ethics and all of these things, I could tell you, Sheikh, one of the most beautiful things that happened in Guantanamo is several of the American soldiers became Muslims.
yes.
And one of the reasons why is because they saw our behavior. It wasn't through debates. It wasn't through standing on the corner in Hyde Park. It was watching us as prisoners where everything's been taken away from us. But there's one thing they couldn't take, and that was our faith. Black or white, Asian, brown, Arab, Turkish, Pakistani, Afghan, Bangladeshi, Nigerian. They couldn't understand why are these brothers, why are these people so connected? They're the most diverse group, and I think it's even in the UK, the most culturally diverse people in the whole of the UK are the Muslims. And you can see that if you go to a masjid. Everybody equal in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Malcolm X famously said, right, when he had this racist view, he believed that black people were gods and white people were devils. Then he embraced Orthodox Islam. He went for the Hajj. He changed his old views. He said, I prayed next to the whitest of the white, to the blondest of the blonde, and they're my brothers in Islam. He comes back. And what he says becomes a threat only to those who want absolute power. He said that if America could embrace this faith that sees no color, then it could rid itself of the plague it has called racism. So, in short, the answer for me is that Islam offers wonderful solutions for mankind. And first, they need to be, one of the reasons why we're unable to engage people is because the media, the politicians, and our own personal fear. We're all too afraid to talk about Islam as a solution for people, as having answers. We just want to keep our heads down. We don't want to get put on the front page of the Daily Mail or the Sun or any of those other tabloids and be called a radical. But if anything this country can teach us, Britain, and it has taught us a lot, is that it was the radicals that changed everything. Radical politics, the suffragettes, the civil rights movements, everything that was radical. And now you've got a new radical movement. And the new radical movement is the pro-Palestine movement, which in and of itself, and alhamdulillah, I'm honored to have been at least a part of a little bit. My organization now is not defending mostly Muslims. It's mostly non-Muslims who've been arrested for Palestine activism, who've been, and I was part of this protest that took place outside Parliament, where we just sat with a placard. It said, I oppose genocide and I support Palestine Action. And Palestine Action, of course, as an organization, has been prescribed as a terrorist organization. But this time round, it wasn't Muslims being arrested. It was hundreds and hundreds of non-Muslims who were taking a principled stance, saying that to defend against genocide, to even cause damage, because that's what Palestine Action is accused of doing, causing criminal damage to the Israeli weapons factories where they have broken into, that's not terrorism. You can call it other things, but it has a history. There's a history of radical activism in the UK with Greenpeace and many of the other organizations the Greenham Common people and so forth, who carried out acts of protest based on conscience. And what this movement now is doing, and it's mostly the people who were arrested, I think I was amongst the youngest, are in their 60s, 70s and 80s, old professional white people.
Majority of them pensioners. And
Majority of them pensioners, yeah.
I believe there are nearly 2,000 people have been arrested so far.
That's correct, and I have to say I was one of them. But I was in the minority in the sense that it wasn't, we as Muslims, it's a Muslim issue. Palestine is a Muslim issue. But to them, to everybody else, it's not a Muslim issue only. It's a human issue. And I said to my colleagues, I said, look at this, subhanAllah. Thousands of ordinary Middle England, sometimes well-to-do. There's been people who've been arrested, include a former advisor to Tony Blair, a former colonel in the army who was also the ambassador, British ambassador to Egypt at one time, vicars and priests, surgeons, some of whom are still actively working. All of these were being arrested one by one, and all of them were saying, I'm prepared to go to prison. I said, Ya Rabbil Alameen, look at this. This is, we couldn't have imagined something like this.
It's a total shift, isn't it?
It's a complete shift in narrative,
Yes.
and it's come at the cost of the most honorable people in the world, and that's the people of Gaza.
Yes.
And they have shown, the people of Gaza have shown us faith, connection to Islam, humanity, strength, steadfastness, all of those things that we think that they're imprisoned, but actually we're the ones imprisoned, and they're the only ones that are free.
Yes.
Actually, their minds are free, and their lands are occupied, but they're free, and they're teaching us something I think that couldn't have been taught by any number of scholars, any number of du'at. What the children of Gaza are teaching us, what the women are teaching us, what the old men are teaching us, cannot be quantified.
If we really want to do justice with this program, we need to go maybe 150 years back, nearly 200 years back, and study how the movement started to destabilize Islamic Khilafah system and like that, and to study what atrocities took place at that time. When that happened, in reality, the Western concept and dream was that they will control the finances around the world, they will be the wealthiest, they will control the media, intelligence, businesses, communication, travel, holiday, weaponry, literally the list goes on. So they had whole catalog where they were they were basically hoping, they were sure that from now on we will control all these things and rest of the world will be beggars in front of us for these things. Even cruise holidays and this and that, and holiday destinations and holiday flights, all this started after that as part of that agenda. Right? And literally, subhanAllah, Allah plays in His own ways. Oil started to discover, and that was first blow that money found somewhere else. You know? Okay, be it in the right hand or wrong hand, in rulers or whatever, but still, it created another part of the world as a leader in financial hub, and table turned round, and these guys like became beggars in front of them. In terms of media, we are still very behind, very, very behind. In comparison, we have only Al Jazeera, for example, only one you can think of.
Yeah.
There are others, Arabiya and like that and so on, but they are very small. Iqra TV is nothing, it doesn't come even in the list of top 1,000 or 10,000 channels, so we are very minor.
Inshallah it will one day.
Yeah. But when you look at it, it's only Al Jazeera. Right? When you think on the other side, then you have Fox News, you have Sky, you have CNN, you have basically GB News here, and you know, list goes on.
Yeah.
Right? And we, because we are British, so we speak English, so we only know English channels. There are many European channels, there are many Latin American channels.
Indeed.
Who are exactly the version of this. You know, there is BBC in different languages and so on.
Yeah.
So on media, still they have their superiority. But
They do. I would say, Imam Qasim, is that whilst you're correct about mainstream media, the newer generation doesn't really care about
the
that
social
anymore.
media has turned
it upside down.
Yeah.
And you know, there was this, I think back in 2014, I believe, or maybe even earlier, there was a program done in Palestine, in particular in Gaza, to make Palestinians into citizen journalists. So recording their own stories, telling their own stories, and
headed from Cairo. And
yes.
And
so this concept of citizen journalism has turned everything upside down.
Yes.
And this is where I think Muslims play a strong role here. If you look, for example, you'll know this in the Arab world. In the Arab world, there are people who have followings of millions of people. They may not be known here, but in the Arab world, they're known very, very well.
And so I know that program quite well. It happened under the, you can say, silent leadership of Ambassador Atal Mannan. He was keen for it and so on. And the idea was to make Gaza to shift Gaza from conventional data to iCloud and so on.
Yeah, and so you see, as a result of all of this, you'll find, I mean, my first wife was Palestinian, so.
How many you have?
I only have one, but my first one, we're no longer together.
Right,
yes.
Okay. But the way you said first wife.
Yes, I'm meaning like previous wives, yes. But Palestine has a diaspora amongst probably the most intelligent and educated of all the Arab peoples, right? You find that. And so, and I found it's not just in, of course, secular studies. You find, I had a brother-in-law who was a professor of mathematics at Warwick University, but also in Islam, as examples, as teachers, as people who connect to the Quran, and especially at this time. You probably saw also when that TikTok generation, so many of them in the early days, young girls again becoming Muslims because they were looking at the Palestinian children, Palestinian men, arms are getting amputated, legs are getting amputated, and they're reciting Quran as an anesthetic because there is no anesthetic. They think, what religion is this that gives such strength, inner strength, peace, and anesthetizes your pain, which you couldn't bear? And I'd seen that before in Syria, with people reciting Quran whilst an amputation is taking place, where there is no anesthetics. And again, subhanAllah, it was these types of things that started to change a lot of the younger people's view and vision. They're not tainted by the mainstream establishment media. They look at it from the source. And that's where the change is coming. And that's why now, if you think about it, mainstream media hasn't played a big role in changing the shift of how people see Israel. Social media did that.
Yes.
You go on the streets, ordinary streets, ask an ordinary person, what do you think of the state of Israel and what it does? Most of them will oppose it. Even people from the far right who don't like Muslims, but they're seeing what's happened and they can't stomach the idea that this genocide is happening for the sake of a foreign nation. What's Britain getting out of it except losing finance, losing their reputation, etc. And that tide has turned, and I don't think it's ever going to change back again.
Because whole new generation, their mindset has been changed. They have been reprogrammed now.
Indeed.
Indeed. Their software has been updated.
Indeed.
Right? And they know the reality, and they will be the future. They are the future of governments in many different countries. They are the academia.
Yeah, so, and you've seen things happen. The ICJ case in the International Court of Justice by South Africa, but it's backed by European allies. It's backed by Belgium. It's backed by Spain. It's backed by Ireland, and two of those nations are NATO allies. So is Turkey. So now the way that this has shifted, it's upset the balance completely. So what's coming next, I'm not sure, but the new generation, we can at least remain hopeful that on the issue of Palestine, most of the younger generation recognize who the aggressor is.
We have lost 1 minute and 30 seconds. So on that topic, do you think Israel losing the grip?
Absolutely. My belief, and I say it absolutely clear, I hope to see the day Israel is dismantled, just like the Soviet Union was, just like apartheid South Africa was. It is an apartheid state. It carries out ethnic cleansing. It carries out genocide, and that has been labeled by Israeli human rights groups like Beit Salam, let alone others. And no state would be allowed to continue that way. And so Israel, I think it's the pages of the dismantlement of Israel have been written in the blood of the people of Gaza, but that dismantlement is going to happen, inshallah.
Inshallah. And you see, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, any country opposing Israel was death sentence for that country.
Indeed.
And now so many countries recognizing Palestine. And American president is still having to stand up with them.
Yeah.
And having to negotiate with them and understand eventually why they are recognizing it.
Yeah, indeed. And there's people in America now asking, what is it about Israel that American interests are put above the people of America?
That's right.
And that's a question that's being asked across the board.
Yes. Thank you very much, Brother Moazzam Begg. We will be back in another session later on. We have other guests lined up at the moment. So we'll be going again to a short break. Brother Moazzam, everyone knows what he went through, and he stood fast. He stood remain straight and firm. Ihdina Salat al-Mustaqim, that dua came true for him. He's been through prisons in Afghanistan and then Guantanamo Bay and so on. So there is a lot to learn from him and to study his personality and his case and his journey and so on, which I'm sure cannot be covered in this one evening, but this is the beginning. And inshallah, as I said, that by 25th anniversary of 9/11 of America, we would like to be much better informed and well equipped with knowledge, with evidences, and with reality. We'll be going towards break, and I'll see you later on towards around maybe 8:30 p.m. or so. And we'll discuss at that time, in reality, the actual situation in Guantanamo Bay and things surrounding it, inshallah. Take care. Fi amanillah. See you shortly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.